Hey everyone, Chris here, and welcome to my channel. For today's 5 on Friday, I'm going to share with you the top 5 books I read in 2020 that were part of a series. So, the first book I'm going to talk to you about is Keeper of the Lost Cities by Shannon Messenger. I read the entirety of the Keeper of the Lost Cities series last year, so I can't say that this necessarily is my favorite in the series, because I would have to give that some consideration since I love them all. I decided to go with this one because this was the first book in the series and it was the one that introduced me to this new world that I fell in love with. So in this series, we follow 12-year-old Sophie Foster, and she has the ability to read minds. This has made her feel like she doesn't fit in with anyone, including her own family, and she's had to keep this ability a secret. One day, she meets a mysterious boy and finds out that he too can read minds, and he knows other people who were just like her. This makes Sophie feel a bit better, but the other things this mysterious boy tells her kind of turns her world upside down. I don't know what it is about this series, but I just absolutely adore it. I mean, these are big, thick, chunky books, and I just fly through them every time I pick one up. Like, the moment I pick up a book in this series, I just cannot put it down until I've finished. I think one of the things I like about this series is the found family aspect of it and the fact that Sophie develops this really strong friendship group. And I really like that there's this very unique kind of cast of characters in this series. Like I said, I picked up this book and I could not put it down. And then I proceeded to devour the rest of the series the moment I got my hands on each book. And honestly, if I had had the ability, I would have flown through the whole series probably in like a week or so. But with everything that happened last year, I had to slowly wait to get my hands on the books because I didn't have access to my library. And I had to kind of wait for that to open back up. So I just really loved this series, and I couldn't imagine not including it on my list of favorite books from a series when all of them really could have made this list. So, the next book I'm going to talk to you about is Aurora Burning by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This is the second book in the Aurora cycle. So, the Aurora cycle follows Squad 312, which is a flight crew kind of made up of misfits. In the first book, we follow the captain of the ship, Tyler, on the eve of him being able to pick out his crew, and he's nervous. So he decides to go for a flight. Keep in mind, this book takes place in 2380. So when I say a flight, I mean in space. And so he takes a flight, just to clear his mind, calm his nerves, and ends up coming across a ship that has been missing for over 2 centuries. He ends up investigating the ship and finds somebody still alive and in cryosleep and rescues her. Unfortunately, during the rescue, he suffers some injuries, so by the time he wakes up, the ceremony where he got to pick his crew is over, and he's left with the misfits and rejects, the people that the other captains didn't want. Frustrated by this, he goes out on his first mission, only for the girl from the cryosleep to have snuck on his ship, and they find out that things aren't so simple with her existence, and they kind of have to band together to figure out what happened to her ship and why it never ended up where it was supposed to be. The second book really expands on that story from the first book, and I love this little group and them trying to get along when none of them really wanted to be teamed together. Again, it's another instance kind of like Keeper of the Lost Cities where you have that friendship group where you see the friendships developing, you see them start to care about each other and stuff, despite the fact that they're so different. And I really, really enjoy that. And when I picked up book 2, it was just nonstop action. Like, the pace was so quick and it left on such a cliffhanger. I am so sad that I don't have book 3. But on the flip side, I am also quite looking forward to rereading books 1 and 2 again before I read book 3 because I love the first 2 so much. So I couldn't imagine, again, not putting this book on my list because I loved it that much, and it was just one of my favorite books of the year in general, let alone books in a series. The third book I'm going to talk to you about is Heartstopper Volume 1 by Alice Oseman. This book follows Charlie, who is openly gay. He's in year 10, and while this year isn't great, he's not being bullied anymore, which is a step in the right direction. It also follows Nick, who is a rugby player and is in year 11. And though he's never spoken to Charlie, he knows who Charlie is, as he was aware of Charlie being outed and bullied for a few months last year. They end up crossing paths, and a friendship quickly develops between the two. I flew through this book, and granted, it's a graphic novel, so they always tend to go fast anyways, but this is another one where once I picked it up, I didn't want to put it down. I found Charlie and Nick in their friendship to be so endearing, and I liked watching their struggles, as Nick's rugby friends didn't really understand why he would want to be friends with Charlie, and Nick kind of had to struggle with that, and Charlie has to struggle with the fact that he has a bit of a crush on Nick, and Nick is such a good friend, and his friendship with Nick is so important to him that he has to kind of deal with that. And I just really enjoyed getting to see their friendship and how it developed, and how quickly these two became so very important to each other. It also left me wanting to get my hands on book 2, and anytime I'm reading a book in a series, if you leave me wanting to pick up the next book, you've done something right. The 4th book I'm going to talk to you about is Tall Star's Revenge by Aaron Hunter. This is one of the Warriors Super Editions, which are kind of mini standalones. Well, I say mini, they're huge, but they're standalones that are set in the world of Warriors. This book follows a character we're introduced to in the first arc of 6 of the Warrior series. If you don't know what Warrior's about, it's essentially clans of cats living in a forest and trying to survive and take care of their clanmates while also attempting to get along with the other clans who they tend to occasionally have issues with. So, in this series, there are 4 clans, and in the main series, we follow cats in ThunderClan. Tall Star, however, is the leader of Wing Clan in the first arc of 6. So, this book dives into his story, from kithood to becoming leader of the clan. I also thought this was really interesting because he's leader of Wing Clan, so we got to see in this book a character we already knew a little bit about from reading the first arc of 6, and getting to know way more of his backstory, which was quite fascinating. And on top of that, we got to learn about Wing Clan, who we don't know as much about because obviously all of our books take place in ThunderClan, so we only ever get that point of view. So it was really interesting getting to see the similarities between Wing Clan and ThunderClan, and how, despite living in different territories, there are certain things that just seem to be universal to all clans. But also getting to see how Wing Clan differed from ThunderClan. It was also really neat to kind of sit there and watch as Tall Star went from kithood to leader, and see how many familiar names popped up throughout his story. There were also some really cool revelations in this novel that just kind of blew my mind, and there's one that literally left me with goosebumps. So I could have put a lot of the Warriors books on here because I love them, but that one revelation that left me with goosebumps meant that this book had to be on my top 5 favorite books in a series of 2020. And the final book I'm going to talk to you about is The Land of Roar by Jenny McLaughlin. This book follows 11-year-old twins, Rose and Arthur. When they were little, they had invented this imaginary land, and they used to play in it all the time. Of course, now that they're 11, they know that imaginary lands don't exist. Until one day, Arthur is sure his grandfather has been taken to this land that they invented. He has to convince Rose that their grandfather has disappeared, and they go through to the imaginary land of Roar that they created as kids to rescue their grandfather from an evil villain they thought didn't actually exist. The biggest reason I love this book is I made up so much stuff when I was a kid. I had a very active imagination, and I was always playing make-believe, and I can't imagine how cool it would be if one of the things I thought was make-believe was actually real. In Arthur and Rose's case, they created a land that not only had some things they found cool or amazing or their favorite things, but also contained things they found super scary. So the idea that they have to go to this land and A, trust that it really exists, and then B, rescue their grandfather from something they thought was terrifying, just gives this book a whole new level of intrigue. I really enjoyed getting to see how Arthur was faster to believe that this was happening, and Rose was far more reluctant to believe that this make-believe land was actually real. It was interesting to see their journeys in coming to accept that their grandfather had been pulled into this land and that they needed to rescue him. And I loved getting to see this world that they had dreamed up as kids. Again, I definitely think it captures the magic of being a child and having an imagination that has absolutely no bounds, because you haven't gotten to the point where people are telling you that you can't do things, or you're not allowed to do things, or those things aren't real, and you still have that magical innocence of childhood. And I think this book does such a great job at capturing that. So those were my top 5 books of 2020 that were in a series. What was your favorite book that you read that featured in a series last year? If you've made it this far in the video, leave me a sun emoji in the comments below. Like this video and subscribe to my channel, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye!